Hello friends, Tanya here for Trinity Stamps, and today I am doing some floral thanks with some 4-bar cards. Now I am using a stamp set that isn't available, so we're going to pretend I used First Bloom. It is in the same style as this stamp set that I'm using. I did not have time to re-record this. I apologize. So I'm going to take some watercolor paper and I'm going to use some juicy embossing ink. Going to stamp the floral cluster on this watercolor paper, and because it's watercolor paper, it does take a couple of stampings to get a nice crisp image so that when I heat emboss, we're going to have perfect heat embossing. I'm using the Strawberry Champagne embossing powder from the Trinity shop. It is gorgeous. It is this lovely rose gold looking color that goes perfect with this soft look that I'm trying to achieve. I'm just making sure that the powder is covering all of my stamping, and I'll use my heat tool to get this nice and melted before I do some watercolor over this image. There is a coordinating die set for both of these, for the First Blooms and the Summer Blooms. I happen to be using the Summer Blooms, but again, we're pretending I'm using First Blooms, which has some beautiful 5-petal flowers that are much more spring-like. So that's far more appropriate for this time of the year. I'm using my Daniel Smith watercolor palettes here, and I've got a lovely pink that I've watered down for the second rose, the smaller rose that's closer, and I'm using a nice vibrant yellow to do my little 5-petal flowers here. I am going to do a little tonal painting on these as they dry a little bit, so don't worry, coming back. I mixed up the yellow and orange with a little bit of a brown that is making that a nice rich rusty orange. I'm taking a mid-tone green and painting all of these little leaves that are sticking out behind our flowers. I'm going to take a darker green and add a little extra detail, kind of like when things have a tint of green right at the base of the buds. And I'm using that darker green to also highlight the leaves. Adding a brighter red in some areas of the darker rose, and I'm going to use the same pink, only in a more concentrated fashion, all over this lighter rose. I just wanted it to be a little more intense. I was really wanting to have some sharp contrast between some white space, and some very bold florals. Next, I pulled out this Slimline Leafy background stamp set. It's a 6x9, it's a Slimline background stamp. I haven't used it much, and I've wanted to use it. It is a beautiful background, and you could stamp this in a variety of colors. You could stamp it with just ink. You could stamp it and heat emboss it. You could do all kinds of things with this. I'm choosing to do some white satin pearl embossing powder over this white cardstock. This happens to be one of my favorite techniques, doing white satin pearl embossing over a background, just to add some texture and some extra interest so that the white space isn't quite so boring. I have this I heat set this nicely. This is the 4-bar card and envelope builder die set that came out in the last release. Has that beautiful modern embossed edge. And I took the second from largest layering panel for a 4-bar card, which is 3.5 by 5 inches. And I die cut that panel, and I'm going to put it on this white card base. And then I'm going to take the Simply Sentimental Thanks stamp set and the dies, and I'm going to cut this out 3 times, 2 with white cardstock and 1 with some, I believe this is called Rose Platinum mirror card from Tonic Studios. I'm going to adhere these together with a little bit of liquid glue and create this lovely stacked sentiment. I'm going to assemble this card now. I have actually put an extra layer of cardstock behind this embossed and die cut panel, and I'm going to adhere that to the card base, get that nice and adhered. You keep using the same word over and over again. Now I'm going to glue the flower cluster that was die cut with the coordinating die right onto that panel. I'm not going to add any extra dimension on this. Since it's a 4-bar card, I try not to add too much extra depth on these. Next, we're going to adhere this directly on the panel also. This is going to have the most height on all of the parts of the card, and it will stick nicely to this embossing also. You just have to make sure that you keep it pretty straight since it is fine detail. Next, on the inside of the card, I wanted to add a little bit of extra stamping with the same stamp set, and I pulled out the Tattered Rose Distress Oxide ink, and I'm stamping off once, and then I'm going to stamp directly on the inside of the card. That seemed to have the best color match to the Strawberry Champagne embossing powder. Next, I'm going to take one of the longer sub-sentiments from the Simply Sentimental Thanks stamp set, and I'm lining that up on near the bottom of that inside of the card. I'm going to stamp this inside the card using some VersaFine Clair Onyx Black, Nocturne, VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And that completes card number 1. We are going to do a second card. I really wanted to do some ink blending. I wanted a nice vibrant but pretty simple card for the second one. It is again going to be a 4-bar card. I've pulled out some Distress Oxide inks here. We've got Picked Raspberry and Mustard Seed, and I have a 5.5 by 8.5 inch piece of cardstock that I am ink blending. This is going to make enough paper, ink blended stuff to make a couple of cards. I'm only making one more card in this video. I know that these are two very bold and bright colors, but they blend together to make a lovely pink, orange, yellow blend. So I'm going to do stretches of pink and yellow to cover the entire card, and then I spattered it with some plain clean water. Next, I'm going to spatter it with some liquid pixie dust, and I have this beautiful blended background. I did cut this down into two 4.25 by 5.5 inch pieces, and I laid all of the different flower images from the stamp set onto the paper, and I'm going to heat emboss these. Lots of heat embossing in this video today. I think I used 3 different colors of embossing powder. So I've covered my panel with all of these stamps, and I'm going to pull out some clear embossing powder to do the embossing on this panel. I just want some subtle detail on this background, which is so busy, but I really wanted to pull a little extra floral into this panel without actually having to do a lot with the flowers. I am going to get these all nice and melted, and I have to make sure to turn this in the light so I get all of the embossing powder melted. You don't want to have any spots that didn't get melted, or you kind of miss some of the effect from this technique. There it is, nice and shiny. Going to again use that same layering panel from the 4-bar card and envelope builder set. Next, I'm going to Strawberry Champagne heat emboss this thank you sentiment from the same stamp set that I did the other thanks. Oops, I was going to do Strawberry Champagne and forgot that I had grabbed the white satin pearl. So I'm going to brush off the powder and re-stamp and re-sprinkle with the right color. And then I'm going to heat emboss that. And I'm going to pull out the coordinating dies from that stamp set and die cut those words. Now this is going to be a simpler card. I'm going to adhere this again with it. It has an extra layer of cardstock behind it to give it a little bit of dimension. And these, it is one simple layer. I am not putting any extra layers behind the sentiment here. Just going to adhere these directly to the ink blended and embossed panel. Just going to try and get these lined up nicely centered in the middle of the card, using my Barely Art Precision glue to adhere these, and that completes the second card. I really enjoyed these cards. I love the bright colors and the beautiful graphics that the stamps and dies created. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please take a moment to do that now. If you're interested in any of the product I used today, check that description box. It's always listed there. And here are a couple more videos that I thought you might enjoy. Until next time, bye-bye.